Hello and welcome to Raising Anchor, your podcast and source for all things Rhode Island FC. I'm your host, Matt Entrican, recording on a Monday night, October 28th. A little different for us. RIFC thrashes Miami FC 8-1 in their last regular season match of the year, setting new records along the way and delivering what may be a final gift to fans at Beirne Stadium for Fan Appreciation Night. We're going to talk about that and so much more on how important this game was going into the playoffs. And then we're going to talk about the rest of the results around the league on decision day and decide how we can predict just how far RIFC is going to get in these playoffs. It's playoffs, baby. To do all of that and so much more, the co-host with the most, Jason Carey, back from his trip to the Megazord. Jason, how are you doing, buddy?
Doing good. I got my release. You know, there's a hold on all that kind of activity for right now, so I get to do some podcast. Had a great time hanging out with some fans.
You were quite the sensation on the night. You know, a lot of people really got into it. They showed up in costumes. I was hoping more, but you know, I also understand how cold it was, and it's really hard. I'm surprised you pulled it off in your blue Power Ranger suit. You've now made a name for yourself in good ways and bad ways. I don't know. But it was really fun getting to see you live it up once again as a fan. It's almost kind of like you've become the on the beat reporter. I'm stuck up in the box, and you're just the man of the people.
I'm out here on the streets with the fans.
So listen, this is going to be a really fun episode. It's a special episode, and the reason for that is we want to make sure that we keep these tight for multiple reasons. But one, just to make sure that we kind of get through the regular season now, get through this Miami craziness, and then get you ready for the Indy preview on our normal time on Thursday. That episode will be going out then. Justin in the chat writes, anchors up. The Amber and Blue crew anchors up, and time to raise the banner. And Tim McDuff, more photos with Jason than with any other player. I was actually hoping you'd get pictures with the players, but it seems like once they all came for their awards, you teleported away.
They were hanging out over there, and I kind of thought like it would be funny to get a selfie with one of them. But I also kind of didn't want, there's like kid, you know, I didn't want to like steal fans, especially when I have that kind of access where like I could, if I wanted to, just show up in a Power Ranger outfit and be like, hey guys, let's get some pictures.
So you're telling me you were afraid you were going to steal Player of the Year Clay Holstead's thunder by showing up as the Blue Ranger?
Like I said, I just didn't want to take that moment away from the fans who don't, can't always get that kind of access.
I mean, hey, I had a great time with it. You were summoned to the post-game scrum, and
I wasn't going to go.
If you go back and listen to the post-game interview, there's a moment where Coach Kano just kind of like completely stumbles over his words and just starts giggling, and that's because Jason just walks into the scrum and sits down, no talking, just sits there and stares at him. We got a selfie with him though afterwards, so that was fun. But hey, listen, we have a ton to talk about here. People already hitting the chat up. Jojea Quizera also deserves more credit. We're going to talk about that. But let's get started here and let's get through the news so that we can talk about this incredible game. I think we kind of played the wrong type of football, if I'm being honest with myself. But let's get through this. So kind of have to go back a week, wash away this win for a second and go back to something that was released pretty late before we had started recording. Just want to touch on it really quickly. It got buried a little bit by us, and so we just want to bring that back to the front. RIFC announces that Zach Harivo signs a multi-year contract extension. Very interesting to learn that his current deal was going to be concluded at the end of this season. That's interesting, right? Because usually a player to be stolen, I mean, he was purchased away from the Tampa Bay Rowdies. We never found out the disclosed fee, but we assumed it had something to do with the way that we had sent or sold Prince Sadie to the Charleston Battery, that there were some mechanisms there that we needed to relieve cap space or afford the transfer. I kind of assumed, I think you did too, that, for any player to negotiate coming on board, even if they're good friends with the technical staff and the coaching staff, that, that's something where it's like, hey, I'll play this year and at least give me +1 if I'm making this move. And that kind of wasn't it. He was going to be done at the end of the season without this contract extension. Does that surprise you that that's how that went down?
Not necessarily. The way that the contracts work here in the USL, they're to the end of the year, right? So maybe this is one of those circumstances where we took a chance. He had some injury troubles, and coach has some experience with him, and said like to the front the front office be like, hey, get him to me, give me a trial period with him. If I can turn him out to be the player that I believe that he is, we'll sign him up. If not, he's only here for 6 months, and then we have an option to kind of move him along at the end of the year.
I guess that's fair. It just shows you how not just the parity, but just how kind of cutthroat this league can be. We're going to get into some depth, in the after the postseason is concluded on what we think will be the most likely trajectories of all the players. So it'll be interesting to see. But as of now, Zach Erevo locked in at least until the end of the 2026 season. If you think, the way that the club announced it, the multi-year contract activating in 2025, at least 2 years, right? So he will be a Rhode Island FC player unless there's another transfer in his future or something else that happens through the end of that 2026 season. So congratulations to Zach. I think that's good business and excited to see that happen.
Yeah, he's become very important for us kind of the second half of the season. So that was a good deal to kind of lock him down. And then as with most of these deals, if for some reason someone comes knocking and is paying a hefty price, then maybe you at least are not losing anyone for free, right? So the club gets value out of it.
Exactly. And then moving on, we have to talk about it. Some of the biggest news out of the week. The golden playmaker, Noah Fuson, becomes the 2024 USL winner of that accolade, being the only player, I should say, that scored double-digit assists this season after tallying his 10th assist on this game against Miami in the 16th minute. Not only did he earn the title on the night, but he also opened up the scoring for RIFC in the 8th minute. 10th minute with the 8th goal of the season for him. He's been on fire. He combined for 4 goals and 4 assists in the last 5 games, and he's now consecutively scored in the last 3. I don't even think Chico's done that. I didn't have time to go back and confirm that. If it did, it happened in the earliest part of the season where Chico scored against Monterey, and then he also scored against Tampa. I think he got 3 goals in 2 games because I think he had the brace at Monterey and then the single goal at Tampa, but I don't think that he scored in 3 games in a row. So that accolade also might be Noah's as well. Jason, thoughts? I mean, we asked him after the game. He just said he was incredibly honored. I don't think he was paying attention or realized that he had won it. And so, for a guy who's pretty quick on his feet when it comes to making jokes and sharing his impressions, I don't think he was prepared really at that moment. Do you think he do you think he knew? Do you think this is a well-deserved honor in this league?
Yeah. He's caught fire at the right time of the season, for himself to be able to kind of sneak up there and win himself that award. We looked at earlier on in the season, there are a few other people who kind of thought that maybe they were going to rack up some more assists, like maybe what is it? Is it Aiden Stanley, I think, from Indy has had 7 when we played
Jorge Hernandez was the one that he was
I know
running.
He was leading, but thinking all the way back to July when we were playing Indy, I think Aiden Stanley had 7 by that point, and that he couldn't pick up 3 more in the the last 3 months, and then Jorge Hernandez has been on 9 for a while too now, and yeah, I mean Noah's just caught fire. Our offense is kind of hitting all cylinders at the right time of the season.
No, definitely he has been phenomenal, and I would rather see him getting hot now than having spent all of that capital at the beginning of the season and struggling now. So it's a great time for Noah Fuson and a great time for Rhode Island FC. And then, that was the USL award of the week, but the team and Defiant 1636 also had some awards at the conclusion of the game last weekend. Clay Holstead wins Defiant 1636's Man of the Year. JJ Williams got the Player of the Game. But Clay gets that giant steering wheel, the anchor wheel. I forget the name of it right now. I guess I'd ask you, we both kind of in the last podcast, we talked about how Clay Holstead and Frank Nodarce were kind of our 1 or 2. I think we may have flipped the order. Both of those players, incredible contributors on the season. But did it surprise you that the namesakes, that the ones that get kind of the attention for the immediate results, whether it's the goals being scored or the clean sheets being provided, did it surprise you that Noah Fuson or Chico or Koke weren't in the conversation for that?
I don't know. I mean, maybe a little bit, but then also maybe it gives credit to show the intelligence of our fan base, and that's not to discredit any of those other names. If I just go through it really quick, Koke had missed a decent amount of run of games, right? Lee had we had got 9 appearances maybe or something, 10 even.
I think it was, yeah.
So maybe if he played every game of the season, maybe he'd be up there for that. Chico's been a little inconsistent. He's come out to be very important for us, but like you said, we couldn't think of him scoring 3 in a row. So he's kind of streaky in that regards. And then maybe if the voting had like we had up until the match to kind of vote, like, Noah's kind of gotten really hot here at the end of the season. And that's not to say that he hasn't been an integral part of this team earlier on. But, a lot of these numbers have been in the last month or so. And the thing with Clay is that he's such a Swiss Army knife in terms of when he's not on the pitch, you can sense that the team doesn't have the same drive, the same engine to go forward. It's those intangibles that like he brings to the team that's really hard to bring up a stat sheet and say like this is why he's good. You have to watch him and you have to watch the team without him and see what he brings to the team.
It's interesting. We've got the Amber and Blue crew here with insider's knowledge on how the vote worked out. Clay won it with 37% of the vote. Koke had 18% and Noah at 14%. So maybe some of that recency bias kind of showing up there at the end. I agree with you. Clay, had been a hero since basically the indirect free kick. And those weren't even just the flashy moments like the Clay bangers and all of that stuff. It was very much that Clay was always in control. I think he had maybe one average game. Let's call it average. I don't even think it was a bad game. And I'm pretty sure he spent 40 minutes of that in a right wing back or right back position. So
yeah, and even in those games, it's very much still at a high level. It's not flashy.
Right. So congratulations to Clay on the Man of the Year. We should have asked him where he was going to go now that he's won that award. And maybe he would say Disneyland. I don't know. But in other awards that were given out by the club this time around, Noah Fuson won Player of the Year for Rhode Island FC. Clay Holstead, so got the brace here, got the Midfielder of the Year award. So the club recognizing that. And then Karifa Yao winning Defender of the Year, while Nate Silvera holds down the Anchored Community Award. Jason, were there any snubs here? Were these the right awards to give out to people? Or do you see this as it should have gone? One of these awards should have gone to someone. Like, how does Karifa Yao, I love Karifa, but how does he win that over Frank Nadarse?
That is an interesting one. Because we had some thoughts about Karifa Yao earlier on in the season, and is he simultaneously the most improved player, or was he never bad at all? And just maybe the lapses of judgment that we felt he had earlier on in the season were more a symptom of the team gelling, and it was like, I don't understand where you want me to be. You pass the ball to a place I'm not comfortable in and put me in a bad position. Now you make me look bad, right? So that's not necessarily mean that he's a bad player. He's just, that's not where he wants to be when he receives the ball, when he takes a pass back. That I don't know. I mean, you look at these awards and it's comparing apples to oranges to bananas, right? Like saying who's the best player in the world. Well, they all play different positions. So you kind of have to take that with a grain of salt. I could definitely see an argument for Frank Nadarse as Defender of the Year. We felt that he's been really consistently solid, but I think also Yao winning is not like a complete snub.
I guess I agree. I mean, look at the controversy today with a certain award. Nick Markanich, by the way, he getting a snub. Who cares if it's Vinny Jr. or Rodrigo? Nick Markanich should have been in the consideration.
Yeah, he lit up the USL. I don't know why he's not getting a nod there.
At least third in the ranking, right? I don't think that Yao is I guess I would say I don't think Nadarse is a snub having not won the award. But I think you're right. I think that Nadarse has been consistent all season, and Yao kind of had to earn his way through that. There was a lot of emergency defending, whether it was because he was adjusting to the expectations of the coach or the expectations of his team members. But there were definitely times where you can hear it back in the day. Like Karifa would either make a bone crunching tackle and be the hero of the game, or there were questions about the solidification. I can talk tonight. The solidification on that back line. And so I would actually ask, if we didn't think about this, but kind of just riffing off the cuff here, if we had a Raising Anchor award, I'm kind of thinking, anchor raising, that's an improvement. There's no one really has a, most improved player of the season. But I would think like if we had a Raising Anchor award, it would be the most improved player. And I think Kreef was the perfect candidate for that.
Yeah. Like I said, I think there were times early on in the season for one reason or another, like it just the performances didn't seem to be there. And now, like, I don't think he's been dropped since then. He probably has the most minutes in the team.
He does have the most minutes. I went and started collecting some data. He has the most minutes. So, I mean, maybe by that alone, like that's just the faith in coach
He's
or the
that
coach,
anchor of
what
the
he
back
has.
line.
He's the anchor in the back line. You love to see it. So let's continue moving on. And we got to talk about the final thing here. The theme of the playoffs. All these clubs are putting out different ones. I saw Lou Cities today, and it's like reach for the stars. And but Rhode Island had theirs. They kept it hidden away and released it after the end of the final game, and it's never say die. What do you think about the promo?
I like it. I like the shirt they gave out too. I was like, "Where's one? I need one of those."
Yeah, I was
Especially
supposed
the
to
way
get one.
they
I was promised a shirt to wear tonight,
they
and
lined
have
the
nothing.
RI up. That
Perfect.
was cool.
Exactly.
Yeah, good stuff there.
Do you know? Fun fact: I said this on the Discord already, but I was going to name this podcast the Never Say Die Pod in honor of the playoff theme. And when I went to go enter it into like the pre-podcast setup requirements, I got this like error, and I'd never seen this error before. I'm like, what am I doing wrong today in my life? And I tried it again, error, and then I realized it was a duplicate error. We had already named an episode the Never Say Die Pod in September, so we must have gleaned it from an interview and decided that was what it was. So once again, the team they're going to owe us royalties for every shirt that's been sold at this point. We'll just collect that check.
They'll just have some random video of Dave McKay saying it, like 6 months ago.
I mean, it's still, we published it first, right? So, and then speaking of shirts, I'm going to do the shameless self-promotion plug now. We did release all of the Draw Kings merchandise today. So there is a shirt, a sweatshirt, a hoodie, a sticker, and a snapback hat, just all of it. Anything you want,
however you want to
quality control. You got a shirt right there. Show the camera what that looks like. At least just the logo. The back is not the final one, but show that. I ordered it too small for Jason, so he couldn't wear that one. So or Jason needs to lose weight. I don't know which one it is.
I got to get back to my summer weight. I've already lost it.
So let's get into this. Let's talk about, was this a game or was this a murder? I mean, wow, this was an incredible performance. But I have to admit, like, this had the inklings and the reminders of like the Germany-Brazil game in the World Cup in 2014, where it was just like, okay, I saw it, but like I can turn this off now. There's no game left here. This is completely
different.
It was
a lot of fun celebrating 8 goals as a fan in one match. Just saying.
So, I mean, by the end of it, my voice was shot. The microphone actually blew out at one point. We had to swap microphones. It was a long night to be doing the announcing for 8 goals. I kind of wish we had spread those out across a couple of other games just to get rid of some of those 0-0 draws that we had, but I digress. We're going to talk a lot about that, but let's get through the player starters and the people that were selected by Coach Cano for this incredible game.
Yeah. So in net, as always, Koke Vegas. In that back line, we've got Grant Stoneman, Kreef Yao, and Morris Dugan. A little bit of a change here. We saw Frank Nodarse playing right wing back with Clay Holstead, Mark Ibarra, and Zach Harivo in that midfield 3. Jokes Quazera, bringing that attack back to the left wing back with Noah Fuson and JJ Williams up top. And then when we look at that bench, we've got Amos Shapiro-Thompson, Jack Paniotu, Albert Dikwa, Stephen Turnbull, Joe Brito, Jackson Lee, and Kofi Chumesi.
I think we mostly got this right as a final wrong Wednesday prediction. We knew the team was playing for positioning, so we knew that they weren't going to do anything silly like put Jackson Lee in or play the young bloods, the untested. We knew that they were playing for importance here. I think the only surprise was we knew that there was going to be some place that you had to figure out where to slot Frank Nodarse in. We had seen him spend a couple of minutes the previous game in that right wing back role, but we didn't think that would be the alternate for Stephen Turnbull. Personally, I was a bit bummed, though, if I'm being honest, that Nate Silvera didn't get to dress for the final game, especially because he won the Anchored and Community Award. So, like, rather than him come out in his finest, East Providence threads, he could have been in his whole keeper kit. But listen, regardless of that, this team did fantastic, not just in this game, but all season. And I think I'd say 95% of the roster selections that Coach made for the year made a complete sense. In fact, I'd say the only game where maybe we didn't set up for success was probably the Pittsburgh game.
Yeah, I was gonna say maybe more the indie game, but
Well,
similar
that's
thoughts.
not fair, and we'll talk about that because
Yeah,
there
we'll
are
get
now
to
serious ramifications
yeah.
about that.
But yeah, like you said, I think we mostly got this right. I didn't particularly see Steven Turnbull being rested, but I think despite him getting subbed often, he puts in a lot of miles on those legs. So give him a little bit of rest. We did get to see him get a little bit of a second half minute. Um, you know, and then there was actually, I mean, it's been a while, but coach used all of the subs tonight, right? Like I think the last few
I don't think Kofe went
matches.
in.
No. All the available subs that he had to
Oh,
him, right?
got it.
Because
Yeah.
so I think it's been a few matches since he's done that. It's usually just like 2 or 3. I think he's been doing lately.
One very important sub, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Amos Shapiro-Thompson getting his first playing minutes of the season in the final regular game. You love to see that happen. But let's talk about the game itself first, and let's kind of go through what really would have just kind of not have been the same if it wasn't the same roster that Coach Kano had picked. I'd like to also make sure we just put in the chat that Tim McDuff says that Nate Silvera would have had the clean sheet. Is this now would Nate have saved that kind of situation here? I don't know.
I mean, we'll never know.
But anyways, let's get into this. 3.41 XG. Holy moly. I looked back. We have never had an XG that high. And when we have had XG of that high, even like the Louisville game, it came with the other team also kind of being pretty close. It was a very much back and forth kind of performance.
When a game becomes like a shootout type of thing,
Exactly.
as opposed to it's like, hey, no one defends tonight.
Miami FC's XG, 0.29. Only 4 shots all game, only 1 shot on target. An improvement from the last week's game where they didn't have any shots on target. But this was a murder.
Check, but I bet their goal, because it's a deflection. I wonder if that was even counted as a shot on target.
It's hard to say. I mean, this literally was a murder, and I hope someone was arrested for it, and that they are found guilty of crimes against humanity. And as long as it's not our team, by the way, we don't need that.
Yeah, the criminals shall be brought to justice.
But let's really talk about this game. The stats I don't think we need to talk about because everything's completely lopsided, more than I've ever seen in any game. I just wanted to start with that XG. Very, very close on a lot of different records, and then also beating even more records. First off, on the amount of goals scored, this game was only 1 goal shy of the largest goal contribution game, depending on either side, in league history. And that goes to the now defunct Reno 1868 FC versus the then LA Galaxy 2 in 2017. So just 1 goal shy of that. Rhode Island FC have now scored 10 goals in the last 15 minutes of the first half. So, you thought I'd say the second half, but now the first half, only Lou City at 17 and Indy 11 at 11 have scored more. Rhode Island FC has also now scored 14 goals via substitutes in the USL, a record that no team can now beat because Chico did the Chico things, and now we have secured that record as well. And then also, did you know that Rhode Island FC is unbeaten in their last 10 matches when leading at halftime? I had no idea that we were that good. The last time that we lost a game leading at the half was Tampa Bay Rowdies in March of 2024. That is an insane record. And then when you go back and look at the record here at home at Beirne, we only dropped 2 games all season when it comes to losses against Phoenix and Detroit City FC. This was just an insane game. There's a lot of people that were already in the chats, we're in the Discord, we're in the Reddits that were saying, oh well, yeah, you beat up on the worst team in the league. But like every other team in this league, in either conference, they all had the opportunity to do that, and no one else could put the hurt on like Rhode Island FC did. Miami FC finished the season with a negative 63 goal differential. That, I mean, 8 of those just topped on top at the very end. I feel so good about this game, and I want to get your impressions, the early ones. We're going to talk about the details here, but overall, did you enjoy this game? Not just because you were a fan in the stands, but like, is this the kind of game that you wanted to see Rhode Island FC perform on the night?
Oh, this is a legendary match. Like, people who watch enough soccer realize not very often will your team score 8 goals in a single match. It could be a very long time before we ever see Rhode Island break their own record that they set tonight. I had a blast. I think it was a great way to end the regular season, to celebrate the fans by scoring tons of goals. I feel bad for Miami FC's fans. They have two. I saw them. They were at our match. So, someone was joking that they're paid to be there. I don't know. I didn't ask them, but as funny as it is for the memes, we talked about this last time. No matter what the result was, this went down as like one of the worst seasons ever for a championship team. And for the health of this league, because it matters, because we play in this league and we want this league to be there for our team to play in, you don't really want to see that level performance. They're basically just free points for every team that plays them.
Right, and in the Eastern Conference, you get two trips to the well, so to speak. So, I think that's spot on. I will say, I don't know what Miami FC is going to do to turn this just disaster around, but they're still coming back next season. So we kind of thought, could this, especially after a game like that, that's the let's just wrap it up. Let's just call the program quits and cease operations kind of result. But they're still in now.
Yeah.
Now the rumor, San Antonio FC and what is it, North Carolina, completely unsubstantiated. We're not going to talk about it more until there's actual real truth or validity to that. But I mean, this club will come back next year. Do you think they're going to learn their lessons after the beat down that they got?
Speaking of North Carolina, I think they should just pull a North Carolina. I think that this club should self-relegate and try and figure out what their goals and their identity are. There's talks of a new stadium. Maybe when that stadium gets built in a few years, maybe they can kind of solidify themselves a better fan base, better support, and then identity, and kind of figure out how they want to progress as a team, and then try and come back up stronger. But for now, they're just, I don't know, they're just the meme team of the league, and that's not good for competitiveness.
Would you pick up a Miami FC player in the offseason? Okay, can you take this game as these are all completely just untouchable? You do not want these players in your team, or is there talent here that can be fostered out, but we don't see it amongst all of the problems?
It's hard to say. We thought maybe there was some talent there with Frank Lopez, but I don't know if he's had a falling out with the coach or the team.
I just don't think he wants to play anymore.
Yeah,
what does he have left to prove in the season?
Yeah, he wasn't even dressed this match. He didn't travel with the team and hasn't played much as of late. The only person that maybe you could look there and say maybe there's something there, Alan Gavilanes. I probably said that wrong. Gavilanes, yeah. I think he's only 24 or 25. He seems to be the one kind of bright spot on that team, so I think that someone will pick him up. Maybe there's one or two things you could work with there, like as depth opportunities, but nothing I'd be telling the team to go out and get,
Tim McDuff writes in the chat, do we need to test the theory that it was your Power Ranger costume that led to all the goals and not the individual performances of our professional players? Tim, I don't know if it was that, but if it's a Power Ranger costume, I will be the first to tell everyone there's a second Power Ranger costume out there. There's a Yellow Ranger that's ready to make an appearance if they dare. I bought one. I couldn't fit into it, so I gave it away to a fan, and we'll see if they're brave enough to wear it to either a potential home playoff match, which we'll talk about in a second, or maybe one of the away parties. So there's a second Power Ranger out there waiting to be discovered.
I mean, I was kind of also dressing up as the proximity to Halloween. I thought maybe I'd see a few more people like, hey, it's blue, kind of this one of the colors of the team.
Again, we did the blue and yellow. Yeah, I was going to be the male yellow Power Ranger. But anyways, let's move on. Let's talk about these records. Let's get away from the Miami problems for a second and talk about Rhode Island's victories here. We already talked about so many records that this team earned on the night, but there were a couple of individual records that we need to mention. One, RIFC's 8 goals, like you said, the most scored in a single match in any team in the USL this season. And it was the largest defeat for Miami. Looking back as far as the start of the pro era, I went through like every single game. I couldn't find anything that was worse. So not only did we score the most goals in season, coming close and tying it for the second best of all time, but Miami's never been smacked around that hard in the history of this club. The 7-goal margin of victory is the largest for Rhode Island FC. Who knows when we will see that again, to your point.
Do you believe in the, some people like to joke around that, if you score too many, you've used up all your goals. I'm not a believer in that either. The only thing I would say is that maybe because strikers can be like streaky to a certain extent, but honestly, this is a lower quality team. So I think that, and we spread the goals around, so it's not like one person had 8. You'd be like, oh well, that person's not going to score again for like 6 months.
I mean, I would argue that if that is the case, some of the streakiness comes from all of the 0-0s or the times that we were blanked this season where we didn't score. So that was just a repayment.
We saved them up and cashed in those goal tokens.
Right.
Finally.
And then also too, remember, Rhode Island FC leads in the top, I think, 4 clubs in the champions division of like goals being spread around the club. Like we don't have the concentrated firepower of a Nick Marcanic or it's not Philip Goodrum in Lou. It's who's their lead striker? Kieran Phillips, I think, is their lead striker. And I mean, he's almost at 20 himself, but unfortunately, Nick Marcanic has walked away from that. So yeah, we've always spread the wealth of our goals. So even if one of our strikers or one of our playmakers gets a little streaky, we've got 5 others in the wings ready to take that over.
Definitely a good problem to have.
But speaking of a player that took it over on the night, JJ Williams, not to be outdone from Noah Fusson's antics, scores 3 goals, earning his first hat trick since May of 2023 in a 5-1 burial of Detroit City FC, where when he was still with the Rowdies. Not only does this hat trick become the first in RIFC history, but Williams also tallied an assist combining with Fusson for the first time since the 5-2 win against Louisville, which elevates Williams to second on the team for total number of assists. So this was a pivotal game for JJ Williams in so many different ways. But what I want to talk about isn't just the amazingness of the goals he scored, but I want to talk about the fact that he buried the penalty kick that got him part of this hat trick. It feels like a couple things happened all at once. One, we finally score our first penalty in club history. So there's another record made. JJ Williams gets that. But second, it was just kind of the way he established the process of taking that penalty kick. We talked to JJ after the game asking if there was instructions, like what was the coach's mandate when it came to penalties. Clearly, to this point, it had been a problem for this team. So what were the requirements? Who was the designated PK taker? And all he said was like, look, I had the confidence going into that moment. I knew I was going to score. So I took the ball. My team had my back. And I went and took the kick. And I knew I was going to make it. Like, one, I want to ask you, having watched as much soccer as you have in your life, does that surprise you of like the leadership, the confidence to just go up and like take the ball and say, I'm doing this? And two, it worked out, but what if that hadn't, right? Like, I mean, I don't want to get into the world of what ifs, but is that the right way to move forward? Is that what JJ Williams needed going into the playoffs?
That's what you want from your strikers. You want your striker to come up and demand the ball and say that I am going to score this. You want them to have that kind of attitude, even if they've missed the last one. You don't want them even thinking or acknowledging in that they have that self-belief that they're going out there and they're going to get it done. I mean, like you said, 3 goals and assists. I don't know if we could have asked for more on the night. Maybe if there wasn't a game after, a red card just for the memes, right?
I will say JJ Williams looked pissed that he was getting subbed off in the 60th minute.
You wanted to run the numbers up?
I think he wanted 2 hat tricks on the night. We asked him, as a player, what it was his tradition. What does he like to do when he gets hat tricks? Like, what is that honorary thing? And he says that he gave his last one to his dad for his birthday, and that his birthday was coming up pretty soon. So he may just do the same thing and give his second hat trick in the championship to his father. So congratulations to JJ. Not to diminish, though, the other players. There were a lot of other personal records bested and or beat on the night. Harivo gets a pair of assists for his second and third for Rhode Island FC. It's his first match with multiple assists this season. It's crazy to think that a primarily holding midfielder who can range into the attacking theater has scored more goals than assists on the season. So he kind of ramps his numbers up. And then, not to be outdone, Jack Panayiotou makes, I think, the most of the minutes that he was given on the night and really asserted some dominance in a new way that we haven't seen from him since, I'd say, one of the first matches that he came on in the first transfer window, but earning his first multi-assist match in the USL Championship, picking up his 3rd and 4th assists in the second half of that game.
Yeah, he had a good showing on the night after we've kind of been maybe a little questioning of what's going on there, but I think this proved that he has a place on this team.
And then in total, 4 players also registered multiple goal contributions in the match, the largest or highest single match tally of the season. RIFC's 5 goals in the first half marked its highest scoring half in club history. So on top of the damage done, this score line basically became American gridiron football at a certain point. So much so that the admin on the social media account, said the extra point was good at the 7-1, and I just was like, well done. Well, I just leaned over and said, well done, good job. And then, of course, the most important record that we have to spend more time talking about than any other, and that is Amos Shapiro-Thompson makes his RIFC debut as a substitute coming in at halftime. Let's just jump right to AST for a second here. I was so incredibly happy. Fans have been wanting to see that since he had returned off the injury report and was available for selection, often riding the pine in these final few games of the year. I went out on the field while everyone was celebrating just to soak it in, right? Just to drink it up. And he saw me and made a beeline to me. We shook hands, we hugged, and he just looked at me and said, "I told you I would make it back before the end of the season." And I said, "I had no doubt." I took some liberty when announcing his name out to the field, and just like, normally you just have to kind of read it very flat and like, oh, now entering the pitch. I screamed it because he wasn't going to get another chance on the regular season. So I was incredibly excited. I just loved the fact also, though, and it wasn't just the scoreline of 5-1 at the half. I love the fact that Kano had the confidence to make him a halftime substitution, because I think that spoke volumes to, hey, like, you're coming in for the final 10 minutes, do what you can with it. It's like, hey, I'm going to give you a full half at this point. We have enough leeway here. Show me what you can do in case I need to be able to figure out if I can rely on you into the playoffs. And I mean, he wasted no time. He did get a yellow card, which I thought was really funny. So I guess I'd ask you, I know it's a short look, it's a brief window in time, but could you figure out what exactly Amos Shapiro-Thompson's play style and responsibilities were on the pitch on the night?
I mean, yeah, like you said, it was only one half of soccer, so it's hard to like really give it a full dossier on him, but he did look promising. He looked to move the ball forward, which is good. And he even contributed in defense. He actually won the most tackles in the game. I mean, there wasn't a lot of defending we had to do, but he won 3 tackles on top of 4 out of his 7 ground duels. I mean, he kind of looks to be like a forward-minded type of, maybe a 10, maybe kind of more of an 8. I don't know if that defensive aspect is something that's always part of his game. Like I said, we're going to need to get some more minutes with him on the pitch. Hopefully, with the postseason coming up, maybe we can see a bit more. And I just hope that the club kind of, I don't know what his contract situation is, but I hope that they bring him back next year so we can see what he can do in like a full year of soccer.
I agree. He's the only player, by the way, that makes Jack Panayiotou look tall. I did kind of think when I saw both of them stacked up in the midfield, like, this team suddenly lost a lot of its size. I mean, Zach Haribo so tall, JJ Williams so tall, Noah Fuson also tall. So it was fun seeing that swap. Moving through this lightning speed again, not to take away, but I do want to also focus. We've only talked about 4 of the goals so far on the night. We've got so many other records that have happened on this game. One, Mark Ibarra scores his first and only goal of the regular season in the 31st minute. He talked about like, hey, I knew I'd get one by the end of the season. Just kind of thought it would come a lot sooner than the final game. Frank Nodarse gets his 6th goal of his career here with Rhode Island FC. I think, again, just cementing how lethal he is on both sides of the pitch. Chico gets back on the scoreboard after a pass from Jack Panayiotou in the 75th. It's his 10th goal, so he earns double-digit goals on the season. Congratulations. He's our now all-time leading scorer in club history, at least for the regular season as of this season. So who knows what will happen next year. And then, of course, Jojea Quizera also gets back on the scoring sheet. First time that he's scored since the home game against El Paso. I mean, we know how important he is to the creation game and to the assists. I didn't realize how long it had been since he got on the score sheet himself. So that was a long time. And then I just kind of want to end it with this stat. Rhode Island now has scored 16 goals in the last 15 minutes of the second half. So earlier I had mentioned that suddenly we were in a really good position in the first half, mostly because of this single game. But now in the final 15 minutes, we've now scored 16 goals. The only 2 teams that are ahead of us, Louisville and Charleston Battery, which are the two teams at the top of the mountain for us. So I think, I mean, again, just the way this team has produced itself this year, an incredible feat, and just what a great way to kind of roll through this at the end of the season.
Yeah, it really was an incredible night. Like you mentioned, that with 6 different goal scorers, and Marky Barr is first, like you mentioned, that now brings Rhode Island to have 15 different goal scorers in our roster. So we're really doing a good job of like spreading that out. It kind of helped that we maybe to a certain extent, padded the stats, as they say, against Miami FC, because RFC have now scored the 3rd most goals in the league behind Charleston and Louisville, who are teams who known to score for fun. And they're also, in terms of like, we're tied with Louisville for the highest number of individual goal scorers in a single match at 6. Because I went back and kind of looked through it. They had a 6-0 win over Hartford, where it was 6 different people scoring. I mean, it could have been worse for Miami. There are often chances that it felt like, I don't know if I don't want to say that the RFC guys were going easy on them at times, but when you're already up by that much, are you going to put that extra tiny like percentage to really push yourself and maybe like risk getting injured to try and get that extra goal when you maybe need it, when that adrenaline is fully running? It's hard to say, but XG is not a 1-to-1 ratio, right? Like with creating almost 4 XG, like we could have scored like 12 goals probably.
Oh, we were knocking on the door for probably at least 10. I mean, Felipe Rodriguez probably hated his night and probably wished he did not get summoned from the academy for this particular game. But
he actually made a few like really good saves.
That's what I'm saying. Like literally, he kept them from getting double-digit goals on the night. Just completely left out to dry though on a couple of others.
Speaking of the goals though, if you had to pick one, which would be your favorite? Personally, I think mine is Mark. I really love that low cross from Harivo, and it's just that slight deft touch to redirect it past the keeper. I think though, also, just like blanking right now. Who else did I write?
I like JJ Williams. It almost looked like a running, like he kind of put the ball behind
the one that was like a chip.
Yeah, but it was almost like he had to do it but didn't want to do it, and his body committed Felipe to the wrong side, and then he was just able to tap it in. But I will say my favorite goal is the penalty, because we needed to be able to tell fans, we need to be able to tell this team, to ourselves, that we can score penalties going into the playoffs.
I was just having a brain fart. No, I really liked No Darcy's, because it's such like you don't expect your center back to perfectly curl one into the bottom corner around the keeper there. He's just like, what if I'm the striker now?
I mean, the real disadvantage was only 3 goals got scored in front of Defiance, right? Because 5 were scored on the other side. So that's the real frustration. Like, come on, guys. Like,
we were still partying for all 5 of those goals.
I know. I'm actually surprised Defiance 1636 didn't run out of smoke or any of the party favors, because I just don't know how. Like, I now need to know, for anyone in the Defiance board who's watching this right now, like, how many goals do you plan for as a contingency? That's what I want to know. But moving along, we're just going to quickly talk Chico. So glad he was in on the bench for this game. The no news kind of concerned us at a certain point of saying, hey, not hearing anything this close to the end of the season could be really troubling, really bad. They just kept it close to the vest, and he was there. He looked really good. He looked physically fit. Like, it didn't look like he was nursing any kind of knock or injury. So great to have him going into playoffs. That was a tremendous piece. So, but I want to ask you, was this the right opponent to play for the final game of the season going into playoffs? Because everyone won against Miami FC for the most part. So that wasn't the issue, nor was the celebration of the 8 goals. I want to ask you, is that the right opponent you wanted to mentally prepare for, from the toughness factor, going in and having to take on Indy and then eventually one of the perennial powerhouses if we make a deeper run?
It was good in terms of giving the team some confidence, especially more so the strikers, getting them some goals, getting them to kind of, boost that ego, so to say, that they like, I score goals, that kind of thing. it's good to continue the form, right? So now, what is it? 6 games unbeaten.
Correct.
But if you were looking for the quality opponent, it's they're in the dredge of they are the worst team in the league this year. So it's like we had said last week, if they were somehow to get points out of this match, it's because RIFC beat themselves.
But this isn't a precursor because we played down, we lowered our guard. Like we're not gonna see this have negative ramifications going into Indy next week.
No. I think that considering the team scored 8, they took it seriously. They were out for blood, as they say. I think maybe if we only scored 2 or 3 and took our foot off the gas, maybe that wouldn't be the right message to kind of send to close out the season when the team feels like they're starting to peak and everything is starting to click. They need to continue that. You don't want them to let up.
I think that tracks. I mean, at the end of the day, when we look at this, the inaugural season ends with a 12-win, 15 draw, and 7 loss season. I want to talk about that a little bit later, but the losses part is really where I want this to shine. 3rd lowest in the championship this year. We'll talk about in a second just how important that is. But let's get into the playoffs now. We've moved past Miami. They are gone. We are now in playoff soccer. It's do or die. It's never say die. And let's talk about how things worked in the kind of decision day, if you will. There were some upsets, some surprises that came through. One, Colorado stealing the 2nd place in the West with a 1-0 win against Sac Republic that sent the Northern California team into 5th and out of a home playoff berth, something that Sacramento does tremendously well year over year and puts Colorado into that 2nd place positioning. Memphis 901 also gets the job done on the last game of the year, beating New Mexico to inch past the Las Vegas Lights, also to take 3rd. So, Vegas was in 2nd. They dropped to 4th. New Mexico, though, kind of spiraling here, now winless in their last 5 games with only 2 points still locked into the number 1 seed. They did a lot of damage in the middle of the year, so they could kind of coast, I guess, but that is not the momentum they want entering into elimination soccer against a very scrappy and, challenging Phoenix Rising team, who they themselves also got beat by Lou City on decision day, losing 4-1. Orange County, on the other hand, they jumped to 6th place after a 3-2 win that knocked Hartford out of the playoffs. Hartford Athletic is gone, only now having entered into playoffs in just 1 season in their entire franchise history. Ouch, that's tough. 4 straight years of not being in the winner's circle. That's a tough community to have to deal with that kind of loss year over year. But with the exception of Colorado, Jason, kind of looking at the West here as a snapshot here for a second, what teams would worry you if it came down to an away USL Cup final? So you're looking at positions 1 through 4, New Mexico, Colorado, Las Vegas, and now Memphis. Which one of these scares you?
If we're specifically keeping it to West, maybe Colorado, just because we didn't look good that game.
It was the altitude. It was the altitude and Ronaldo de Moose.
Yeah. I mean, when you look at these other teams, Las Vegas Lights are maybe not the same team when we beat them. But, having beaten them previously, that kind of gives you that like, well, maybe there's something there. New Mexico, we tied with them. So I think that I wouldn't be too afraid. But yeah, and who else is in the is it Memphis, right?
Memphis is in the 3rd spot.
Is in the 3rd spot,
which we were away.
Yeah, I feel like that's
Coach
more
Kano,
us
by the way,
kind
said
of
that
beating
was
ourselves in that one, though.
Coach Kano said that was the pivotal game of the season. Like that was the game where we beat ourselves. They were able to get a point in the very dying seconds of that match, and that was the literal never say die moment for this team. And he said in the post game, they had asked themselves what kind of team did they want to be, what did they learn from this, and the locker room just kind of clicked, and it was they never looked back from that moment.
Yeah, so maybe just Colorado would be the only one where I wouldn't feel that comfortable going into it.
So let's talk about the East. What's going on in the East with this decision day lineup? Some surprises, I think, but not mostly predictable.
Yeah. So while it all came down to if RFC could carry the day against Miami FC, a majority of the playoff standings shook out the way they were projected after Tampa's draw against Hartford midweek. The Riverhounds bested El Paso Locomotive 2-0, earning them 7th place on goal differential against North Carolina FC, who pulled off a come-from-behind win against the Las Vegas Lights, winning 2-1. It's weird to see tiebreakers between 7th, 8th not be wins, but instead first head-to-heads, which was tied, and then it go to points per game. Considering with 24 teams, the conference were most as inconsistent as they could get. Nevertheless, the team with more wins and more goals takes the 8th seed.
That is so crazy. Like when you think about it, I mean, I understand their mechanics. We've had to become masters of that. But like when so many of the leagues around the world do it differently, it's silly that the team that scored more or won more isn't the first tiebreaker.
Yeah, I don't. They'll have to take a look at that. But so RFC, meanwhile, locked themselves into 5th place, tying in points with Indy at 51. But as I kind of mentioned earlier, losing that head-to-head in terms of that away match where we suffered a 1-0 loss to them. And you asked Coach about the hindsight of that loss to Indy earlier this season during post game, right?
Yeah, he first off, he said he didn't have any regrets. He himself went back and reinforced it was the busiest week of the season, and they had a lot of challenges that they had needed to face. One was there were a lot of players that deserved minutes, and that was the perfect game to find a spot for them to get those minutes. And Coach, continued to say that he needed to be full strength for the derby. It was a game that was going to win the hearts and minds of fans, and so he made the right choices. It's ironic that the tactical choices came back to haunt us on decision day, because even a draw in that game would have swung us in a different trajectory. But, Coach didn't seem too worried about this next time that they're going to face off. One, because RFC will be a completely different team than the ones that they saw, not just because of the progress made by our starters, but that most of our starters didn't play in that game. He did also, though, fair credit to Coach, say that Indy's a tough team to break down and score against, but he's not afraid to take it to them at Michael A. Carroll Stadium this upcoming weekend.
Yeah, it was only a 1-0 loss, considering that we rotated that heavily. And there are a few opportunities there where, this can be a game of millimeters at time, or maybe if something kind of just went a different way, maybe we would have been talking about something different here,
I agree. So, now that the seating's been finalized, which side of this bracket do you feel gives us the better advantage? Is it the one we're in with North Carolina, Indy, and Lou City? Or is it the one with Detroit City, Pittsburgh, Tampa, and Charleston? Obviously, I think Tampa would have been the flip. So eliminate Tampa from that if we were to switch over. But did we end up in the right bracket?
Personally, I kind of like our chances more so in the bracket that we're in. In terms of the teams in the Eastern Conference who I don't feel comfortable playing against and would have a hard time saying like, yeah, RFC is going to go out there and get it done. That would be Detroit, who beat us at home. And then, it was pretty tough match away there. We got a draw, but there were some chances there that maybe they could have taken it, or maybe we didn't take control of that game the way you had hoped that we would have. And then Pittsburgh, they are a very frustrating team to play against. Bob Lilly knows how to defend. They came to us early on in the season in a very cold match and, got away with a point when earlier on in the season, they weren't that great. They started off the season very poor, and now they've gotten to a very good run of form. They've added some, attacking talent up front with Jaquison, and that's not a good mix for success. Obviously, you want to have to beat the top teams to get through, but maybe this gives us an opportunity to get a little further, build that confidence. So then when you do face off against one of those teams, you're like, all right, we've already knocked off Louisville. We can take on anybody at this point. And then lastly, to a certain extent, Charleston, right? It was 2 draws. So that's very kind of a mixed bag. And they feel like I honestly think Charleston are better than Louisville. I think that they have the complete package. I think they have the defense and the offense. Sometimes maybe that offense lets them down a little bit, so maybe they didn't pick up as much like points, whereas Louisville is very much a team that's we're just going to go out there and somehow score 5 goals every match. But sometimes that doesn't work, and maybe our defense isn't that good. And a lot of the Louisville fans constantly complain that they're not 100% sold on their goalkeeper. Maybe that's part of the issue. But yeah, Louisville on the right day can beat anyone by multiple goals. But I also think that they're a little more vulnerable in the back than some of these other top teams.
I don't know if I'd agree with you on that. Charleston seems to be spiraling, and I don't know if it's because they're managing minutes of their team right now because they were locked in second, so long ago. But it's an interesting discourse to have because we'll find out really. It doesn't matter at this point. We'll see what teams can try to punch through Charleston on their way up from the bottom bracket while we deal with Indy and then Lou. But either way, we have to go through one of those two teams. And at least in the example with Lou, we've done it already. And we're one of the only teams to do it at that level, and we're one of the only teams to do it at their home this season. So if there was one team that Lou doesn't want to face in the Eastern Conference in a playoff game at home, it's probably us right now. So I'll give you fair credit. Putting the bracket back up on the screen for a second, though, I just want to ask you: is there any cup sets in the quarterfinals that you see? Is there any teams that are, before we get into our predictions, that you think like maybe there's a surprise waiting for us? Is it, can Tampa Bay get it done against Detroit City? Can Sacramento, show the Las Vegas Lights what it means to play playoff soccer in the USL? What do you think?
I don't think it will happen, but I also wouldn't be surprised. New Mexico did not end the season well. If Phoenix Rising, really lean into their 100% heel and just kind of, cheekily knock them out, I wouldn't be surprised there. I don't want it to happen to them. We had good experience with their fan base. I want them to do well. They seem like a decent team. Orange County Soccer Club is on a very good run of form. I think was it 8 matches unbeaten. A lot of those matches were wins. I don't think it would be very much of a big upset for them to knock out Memphis. Memphis is a interesting team. Like they're kind of like a Loudon in a way. I'm not really sold on them. They can be good at times, but I don't really know like what they are.
I think they're very good, to be honest. Let's get straight into the bracket predictions. So I've got yours up on the screen. So why don't you tell listeners why you think this is how it's going to shake out?
Okay, nice. This is my like what I want. I have another version that's more serious. But yeah, like I said, I think New Mexico will get that done still. I think that they'll
against Phoenix.
I think Las Vegas Lights will take care of Sacramento. I think that they've kind of, been spiraling down, and whatever they had, they lost it. Orange County is going to take care of Memphis. The Switchbacks are going to knock the Roots out. The Roots also have kind of been spiraling, although they had a good start earlier on. From there, you have New Mexico taking on Las Vegas. New Mexico, I think, will, I want them to get it done and move on to the Western Conference Finals. Then that sees Orange County and the Switchbacks. I think Orange County, maybe their momentum will just kind of keep going.
That is a bold prediction, by the way. Very bold prediction.
There's no science behind any of this. It's all about vibes. So then New Mexico United will take on Orange County. New Mexico will get to the final. And then if we look on the Eastern Conference, Louisville will take care of North Carolina FC. I think they had a good run to end the season, but Louisville will be too strong. I think RAFC will take care of Indy, so that pits Louisville and RAFC against each other in that next round. On the lower bracket, Detroit will beat the Rowdies. The Rowdies have been kind of have a rough second half of the season, and Detroit is a stubborn team. And that leaves you at the bottom with Pittsburgh and Charleston. Although Pittsburgh been having a good run of form, and I can kind of see why you say that Charleston have been spiraling a little bit, but you also saw in that second half where they kind of turned it on, and I think that they'll be able to kind of
They
take
turned
that
on
moment.
nothing. Koke dropped a ball, and Noah Fuson couldn't score a penalty.
I mean,
They turned on nothing. We Memphised ourselves.
it's
That's it.
no, I don't think you're giving them enough credit. And then so that leaves Charleston taking on Detroit there. Charleston will get past Detroit, and then RAFC with the experience that they have of beating Louisville away will get it done again. Face off against Charleston, and then they'll make it to the final and be the champions.
We're basically going to be the next Phoenix Rising of winning it all away.
Yeah,
I love that.
I think more realistically, I think we'll go against Louisville. We'll be confident, but I think Louisville will get it done.
Oh no, we're not
And
even.
then-
No. You're done cutting. How do I mute you? No. We win all the way. We're not being realistic here. I've got my bracket up now. So same way, New Mexico beats Phoenix Rising. I think Las Vegas Lights do get it done against Sacramento because Sacramento's just kind of in their own death spiral right now, and Vegas is very strong at home in front of their 430 fans. Memphis 901, I think, does carry the day against Orange County. Memphis is a weird team, but they know how to get results when it matters. Orange County is only recently coming back because of the injury bug that has plagued them all season. And then in Colorado, Switchbacks, they completely smashed Paul Blanchett and the Oakland Roots. In the semi-conference, you got New Mexico beating Las Vegas Lights, and then I've got Colorado beating Memphis 901. Bringing the Western Conference final to New Mexico United versus Colorado. New Mexico gets it done. I just want New Mexico because I want to go to Isotope Park, and I want to go hang out with the Curse. I want to go hang out with Somos Unidos, Somos Moss, excuse me. I feel like that's a good operation to go see. And so if I'm going to travel for a USL Cup away, that's where I want to go.
Winter weather in the Southwest.
Exactly.
Too.
Yeah. I don't want to go to Colorado Springs in the winter. No. And then on the eastern side, similar to you on the top, I've got us beating Indy 11, Lou City beating North Carolina, and then us beating Lou City. And I firmly believe we can do it on the day. I'm not just saying it for the memes like you are.
I didn't say it for the memes.
You kind of did. In the bottom bracket, I've got Detroit City besting Tampa Bay because they're out of control at this point. They couldn't even beat Hartford. And then, but where I've got this changing is I've got the Charleston Battery losing to the Pittsburgh Riverhounds. Bob Lilly has done some sort of voodoo with this team. They have now only lost one game in their last 16 matches. The Pittsburgh Riverhounds are terrifying. And
see, this is more of the memes here. You said that we're gonna beat Pittsburgh Riverhounds in the Eastern Conference final.
Hold on. See, let me finish with Pittsburgh. They are on fire, and Charleston is just like misfiring. I don't think that they're not a bad team. I think they're a very good team, but I think that they did the inverse where they got a little cold going into the playoffs, and I think that's going to hurt them. The same way, look at the Riverhounds. Last year, they were the playoff Supporter Shield winners. They got knocked out in the first round with a home game. I don't know if Charleston wants Pittsburgh right now. I looked at their head-to-head this year. Charleston couldn't get the job done against Pittsburgh either, so I think this is Pittsburgh's game to be had. Now, against Detroit City, that's where it gets weird. Same thing. Neither team could get it done on the day, but I just think Pittsburgh has the better defensive structure that Detroit's not going to figure out how to get around. So then I see Pittsburgh coming in the Eastern Conference final to us, that we are going to get a home game for the Eastern Conference final, and that may be just enough. After we've bested Indy and Lou away, we have all the confidence going in the world. It's revenge of the Electric Boogaloo Part 2. We take on Bob Lilly and that team, and Chico and Marky Barra score hat tricks each, and we win against the Pittsburgh Riverhounds home, and then take it to Isotope Park where we beat New Mexico United. I mean, we may not get 2 individual hat tricks, but I do think that is a more possible scenario where I also have to say Rhode Island FC wins every single game outright. So listen, this has been a lot of fun. I want to wrap things up with just kind of your overall feelings on the season. I can go first if you want. I don't want to catch you here, unawares. Give me a minute review of what you feel RFC has done for this season.
So it took this team a little while to get going, right? The season kind of started off with a lot of draws, a few losses. We got one win. We thought it would never come, but it happened. But then it took us 2 more months to win another game. Playing in a temporary home wasn't optimal, but I think that the club did very well to make it feel like a proper home. we were all kind of surprised the way that they kind of would seamlessly turn that into like, a little RIFC stadium. Ironically, the last match with football lines on it was not a great way. maybe a good thing to leave like a bad taste in our mouth so we don't, miss Beirne too much. But overall, I mean, I think it's been a fantastic season. This has been a really exciting team that's created an identity that I think really appears to resonate with the fans. In some ways, it almost feels too good to be true. I know we try and be really positive and optimistic about this team, but was it 28 losses for Miami? Hartford in their first year, 23 losses. 29. So they had 29.
Yeah.
This could have gone really bad. But I think that this is really important that the club did this well, because I don't want to say like controversy, but there are a lot of naysayers out there who, not even just the stadium, who just bring negativity and they're like, soccer's dumb. Like, no one's going to watch this. Where's the Paw Sox? And it's like, well, I don't, they're gone. I'm sorry. We can't change that, but we have a team here and
we're really good.
Not only we're really good, I mean, like, the fan support has been phenomenal. There are multiple matches where the weather wasn't good and we still got like 3,000 people to drive all the way up to Smithfield.
Yeah. Listen, I looking back on this, this record, 12 wins, 15 draws, 7 losses. It gets us 5th place in the Eastern Conference. But when you look at this as like a Premier League table, we took 6th overall in the entire league, right? Like, that is very honorable in a first-year expansion team that played its first game only 60 days after coming together as a group. It did take a while, like you said, to get from where we started and the first win not coming till almost the end of April, and then the many draws in between. But like with those draws, I was really impressed with Coach Cano. He threw, I don't know if it's in the edited version of the post game, but we finished the interview and he's like, you really weren't going to ask me about draws? You weren't going to ask me, you of all people, Matt? And I thought that we already kind of knew the stance, but Coach wanted to get it out there. He wanted the fans to know. And he mentioned that the Draw King record was probably the thing he was the most proud of this team in the year. That, it showed the team themselves, it showed the community, it showed all of the other teams in the league that this was a tough team to play against. And, we keep talking about the glass half full, half empty on that record, but Coach said it perfectly. We had single digit losses on the season. We only had 7 losses. And not only was that 3rd best in the year, but I went back and looked at every inaugural team's performance in the history of the USL. Do you want to know where that loss record earned us for the first year expansion team? Okay. In all of the club, in like the 49 clubs that have been created for the USL.
I remember when we were a few episodes, it was a little longer than that, but a while back, we were trying to get some perspective of that. But I can't remember, but I know it was good.
3rd best of all time. And
it's impressive.
There's a big asterisk there, because if you look at the 2 teams ahead of us, it's the San Diego Loyal, who only played 15 games in their first season, where they had 3 losses, they had 5 losses. So 1/3 of their season lost. And then it was Orlando City, when they were still a little USL team in 2014, when they only played 26 games. So they didn't even play a full 34 games. There was a couple seasons where they played more because the MLS Next Pro teams were in it. But
yeah.
But so, like, I mean, you had 2 teams. One's now an MLS powerhouse. One was like for the hearts and minds of the fandom, but neither one of them played as many games. So there was more opportunities where they could have surpassed that record if they had gone things had gone the wrong way. So we're now in the greats. We're tied with that record, by the way, with the start of Sacramento Republic and FC Cincinnati, who both also had 7 losses on the season, but they also only played 31 games, not 34. So this, to me, makes this look like the most bestest team that has ever come out of not just the pro era of USL, but of all eras. The only thing that Rhode Island FC didn't take away as a win on the year was more wins. because they had more draws. They got that record instead. So there's a few point gaps where we still took, I think, 7th overall in total point accumulation. There were other teams that just got more wins, but they also had more losses. So for as long as I care, this was an incredible success. This was a team that performed beyond all expectations, and anyone that doesn't look at this as one of the greatest expansion clubs in the USL history, I think they need to get their eyes checked, because this was an incredible season. And I am so happy for Coach Kano, the entire technical staff, and every single player and front office member, and all the incredible and tireless work they put into putting an exciting product out for the fans. Coach Kano said at the beginning of the season he wasn't going to promise wins, and you know what? He sure didn't. But maybe he should have promised the draws. Jason, let's talk where these playoffs are going to be matched up. We're going to cover the USL's kind of breakdown of the playoffs ahead in another episode later this week on our normal Thursday time. But the first round of kickoff of playoffs starts this Sunday, November 3rd, as RIFC takes on Indy 11 away at Michael A. Carroll Stadium in Indianapolis. Right now, the kickoff time is up in the air due to some other results that need to be determined for a local collegiate team, the women's soccer team. So it could either be 1 p.m. or 7 p.m. As they're waiting for some midweek results to determine if they'll get a playoff berth themselves. I imagine the game's at 7 p.m. I mean, I don't know why you'd want to move it up to 1 p.m. anyways. So, like, I don't really understand why you don't just, like, lock in the 7 and let people start planning their life.
Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on there either. Maybe this is something where USL wants the 1 p.m. time slot
to, like, lock in all of the different teams.
To kind of to spread the matches out or something. I'm not sure what's going on with there. I would think they would just like, well, we'll go with 7. But, should be interesting to see how that happens. I imagine there'll be a lot of fans watching IU women's soccer to kind of figure out what that result is, where our time slot's going to end up.
I thought you were going to say, oh, go ahead.
But I've also heard that as a lot of fans are looking into travel expenses and whatnot, trying to understand why is it so expensive. RI's one and only Taylor Swift is going to be there.
Well, she's not going to be at the game. Let's be completely clear. She's going to be.
Yeah, she's a huge RIFC fan. I bet she'll be there. The biggest. So maybe actually that's what it is. They're like 1 p.m. so Taylor can go, but she's not 100% sure she can work it out with her schedule. So if not, they'll push it back to 7.
I cannot imagine what that would look like. But if you aren't making the travel because you're not trying to see T Swifty, or you just can't afford to see the game in person, the club is having its official watch party at the Thirsty Beaver in Smithfield. Meanwhile, the Defiant 1636 will be at the German American Culture Society of Rhode Island in Pawtucket, partying down in the Rathskeller. Either option should be a great environment, but for us, the GACSRI is so much closer, and my loyalty is to always have German beer while watching soccer. So
I thought it was to Defiance, but yeah,
I mean them too. Well, I didn't get the secret Defiance points. So, and if I'm being honest, it's just a lot closer. So, Jason, really fun doing this Monday episode, and I can't wait to talk all things playoff soccer a little later this week. Thanks for coming on and having fun with me on a Monday night.
Yeah, it's been fun as always. Let's wrap this up so we can get ready for that next episode. All right, guys, make sure to check out our friends over at the Blazing Musket for all your New England soccer coverage, including RAFC news, and that's at theblazingmusket.com. You can follow us on Twitter, Threads, and TikTok at RAFC Podcast. You can check out our Instagram at Raising Anchor, and then we have that website, raisinganchorpodcast.com.
Anchor's up, buddy, and can't wait to see how far we go in these playoffs.
Anchor's up. Let's get it done.
And of course, feel free to leave comments in the outro, and we'll put those up on the screen. Until then, talk to everyone later.